Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, in a time where it seems like Hollywood can't do anything but reboots, remakes, and or sequels, it seems like one of those out there that has now come out that maybe probably doesn't deserve all necessarily the hate that it's getting out there. The Crow reboot is turning into an absolute disastrous dumpster fire. And honestly, a lot of the time, we take solace in these kind of things. Like, we take joy in this. We like to, roast these kind of things and talk about that kind of stuff. But a lot of time it's because those companies deserve it, right? They're either a company that's gone completely and totally off the rails with a lot of crazy nonsense out there, decided to take their storytelling and their fans and tell them to just basically go shove it in a situation where any kind of criticism, any of that kind of stuff comes out there. In this situation in particular here, I don't think that's really the case. I think this was an honest effort, an honest situation out there, and it just turned into a disastrous dumpster fire in a very bad time. And that, of course, boys and girls, is none other than the Crow reboot out there, starring our dear sweet Skarsgård out there. And it's one of them situations where I really like Skarsgård. I think he's a great actor. He comes from a great stock. His older brother and, of course, his fathers are they're great actors, and his father's an absolute legend. And it's one of them situations where I think this is one of them situations where occasionally an incredible actor just takes a role out there that just turns into a disastrous dumpster fire. And I don't think it's completely and totally involved with the Crow's fans. Now, the Crow people involved in doing this reboot out there, because I think, like I said, they think they made an honest effort, but it just ended up falling flat in an era where remakes and reboots seem to be the trendy thing, and a lot of the audience is getting drastically tired with this. And of course, the original Crow movie is such an absolute masterpiece. Everybody loves it. And of course, with Brandon Lee's being his last showing in a movie out there and in cinema, it's something that is really held in a very high regard, and it's something that has been watched countless times by fans over and over again. I cannot tell you how many times I have watched the Crow movie. Obviously, the comics that are based on are absolutely legendary. The art style of the creator is something that is extremely unique. I've met the guy before. He's a very nice and humble kind of man out there. And it's just a shame to see something that the iteration out there just ended up doing so disastrously much of a dumpster fire. So we're going to check out this article from cosmicbook.news, get into some of the stuff that the critics saying, and then, of course, get you down to the latest absolute numbers that we've got after its opening box office weekend, and show you how much of a disastrous dumpster fire this movie actually is, and what some of the critics and the audiences are out there saying about this movie and where it all went wrong. So we're going to check out this article, but before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, because boys and girls, we're inching closer and closer to 1,300, and I could not do this without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Did you go see the Crow reboot movie? What did you think of it? Did you think it was good? Do you think it deserves all the hate it's getting from the audiences and the critics out there? Or do you think this is something that just came at the very wrong time? Or was this thing as much of a disastrous dumpster fire as the numbers do indeed reflect? So, from cosmicbook.news, The Crow, Rotten Tomatoes, reactions, box office, depressing, soulless, and thoughtless. Ouch. And honestly, I'm one of those guys out there that watched the first trailer and thought, of course, this is not a movie we need. This is not a movie we've asked for. This is not something that should be done. But the initial trailer didn't look all that bad. And honestly, it's one of them situations where if they would have gone in a different direction, if you would have done just a Crow story in the same universe, but with a new Crow, instead of trying to reinvent Brandon Lee's character, that probably would have gone much better over with the fans. Unfortunately, this is not the direction they went to. So the first batch of reviews for the Crow reboot are in, along with Rotten Tomatoes score. And it's no surprise that the flick from Lionsgate is said to be depressing, soulless, and a whole lot more. And it's one of them situations where this is just kind of, oops, sorry about that, boys and girls. This is one of them situations where this just kind of ends up going. So the Rotten Tomatoes score probably hasn't gotten all that much better, but we'll look it up for you guys live right now as we're recording this video, so that way you guys can absolutely know and understand exactly how bad this thing is sitting at. And as the time of this recording, this has gotten actually a little bit worse from when Matt's talking about. No, it's about the same. I think the audience score and everything else, and they might have it stuck at this kind of situation right here, but we're looking at 20% from the critics and, of course, 65% from the audience. So obviously this is one of them situations where this is not going very well whatsoever. And obviously Matt McGlone has been really good about going through all of this and updating it. So Rotten Tomatoes initially now has their update now is with 80 reviews, the score is now at a 20%. The Rotten Tomatoes audience score now has the popcorn meter is at 65%, which comes only from fans that have verified to have purchased tickets. This flick also has a B- cinema score. Needless to say, even the audiences aren't happy with this in any way, shape, or form. And you can pull over here from the verified audience scores over here. You can go through all of the reviews and all of that kind of stuff. But even the all audience score with over 1,000 plus ratings is now at 56%, boys and girls. People are not happy about this movie, and that is sad to hear. But hey, that's the way it goes. And if you don't do something that's good and loyal to the source material, if you don't make the fans happy, that's the way things go. So some of the reviews over here are interesting as well. The Crow is from director Robert Roden and stars Bill Skarsgård as the titular character, and FK Twigs is his girlfriend Shelley. The plot follows the same exact story over and over and over again. The negative reviews below. Let's check some of those out here. The Crow 2.0 achieves a special kind of depressing IP math. A decade plus of development, 26 credited producers, countless scenes devoid of connective narrative tissues, adding up to 111 incompetent, soulless minutes. Ooh, that's from the Globe and the Mail. The Real Roundup says a downgrade from the 1994 original Crow is a bland remake that's only partially redeemed by its extremely bloody and insanely gory action sequence. Still, audiences are better off with this utterly unnecessary cinematic resurrection. And that was one of the things that we had heard, is they were going to try to be a little more accurate to the comics in the sense that they were going to show a little bit more of the violent scenes, because there were a few things from the original movie, obviously, the things were changed from the comics, specifically a particular scene involving Eric Draven and some interesting things that he puts inside of his body that help him kind of go out there and be a Superman kind of situation. They kind of left that out of the original movie. And that was one of the things, that the violence and the blood and the gore that is represented in the comics was toned down a little bit even for the movie, which of course still has a whole lot of it in there as well. But there's another one over here, right here, that says this is from Sin Express. The Crow is a big dud, quite boring, drags on for the first 40 minutes, and includes unlikable characters with hollow motives. The acting is also weak, with the lead channeling Anakin's delivery from the prequels. Ouch. Only bright spot, a bloody action sequence towards the end. The Crow is almost on par with Borderlands for being one of the worst adaptations of 2024, maybe of the decade, tweeted Vex Electronica. This is bad right here. The Hollywood Reporter, an original scarcely improves on the original's disposable sequels. They're literally saying it's barely any better than all of the horrendous sequels from back in the day. Nerdist says the Crow reboot film steps up to the challenge of honoring the original film while charting its own course. The Crow is an obscene display of excess by a director who grossly misunderstands the material he is drawing from. And it just goes on and on and on. The Daffy remake that is for the birds, says the Wrap. The 2.0 achieves a special kind of depressing IP math, a decade plus of development. And yeah, we went over that one as well. It just goes on and on and on. Some people enjoyed it. Some people said it was okay, but it's overall an absolute flop. This is a disastrous dumpster fire. When you break it down to the actual numbers itself, it just gets even worse, because as you can see right here, the numbers themselves reflect a production budget of $50 million. And this thing in its domestic box office opening weekend only garnered $5 million. Its Thursday night previews were in the hundreds of thousands. This thing is a disastrous dumpster fire, boys and girls, and its international box office, it looks like it probably hasn't gotten a wide release, but needless to say, the wide release, concerning all of this absolute pushback that's already coming out against this movie, is not going to save this movie. You're not going to end up making the honestly $150 to $200 million you need to make back to honestly make a solid profit off a movie with a production budget of $50 million. And that's just the sad state of affairs. So as whether or not this movie was something that let's put it this way. This is a movie that was not needed. This was not a movie that fans were asking. And in a time period right now where it seems like everything is a reboot and a remake and a reimagining, and those words automatically give a lot of fans a lot of moments to pause. And then when you have trailers out there and you have people involved with this kind of stuff that really don't sell what you should be loving and being excited about, this movie is really something that falls flat. I said early on, I love the Crow universe. And this could work. I love Bill Skarsgård as an actor. I think he does an incredible job when he's given proper direction, when he's given proper writing. It sounds like that was not the case in this movie in any way, shape, or form. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to the same thing, whether you decide to do things for ideological reasons or do you decide to do things because you think it's a good idea and because the marketing tells you it's going to pan out. At the end of the day, if you do not make the fans happy, you do not make those hardcore fans out there happy, then things are going to fail miserably. There is not a large clamoring group of fans of this medium of The Crow out there that love love the comics and love the original movie out there clamoring for some great remake. The Crow is a masterpiece that is beloved by fans worldwide. This was not something that needed a remake or a reboot. It wasn't some disastrous dumpster fire of a poor adaptation that needed to be properly done. It's an almost perfect movie that a lot of people out there love and go back and watch over and over again. The smart decision, like I stated earlier, was to give us another Crow character. You could have easily done that and made a very successful movie. But when you try to remake and redo and recapture the amazing, excellent, just glorious magic that the original dark gothic horror movie that The Crow was with Brandon Lee, you're going to end up failing miserably. And that's exactly what happened. So next time, be smarter, maybe come up with an original idea, but if you really want to play in the Crow universe, just do something on your own. It's the only reason any of us are kind of excited for the Highlander with Henry Cavill, besides the fact that Henry Cavill's in it, because they are trying to play in the same sandbox but tell their own story. Reboots and remakes, no matter how desperately Disney tries to, and the rest of Hollywood tries to push this, is not the future. Fans and audiences, specifically of horror action genres, want original content with original characters. And sadly, The Crow remake, the reboot starring the wonderful Bill Skarsgård. Yes, boys and girls, it's cheesy, it's a one-liner, but The Crow failed to take flight at the box office and with the audience, and all of that ends up to, you don't make the audience happy, you end up losing money. And this Crow ain't gonna fly, boys and girls. It's gonna crash and burn.